My parents unplugged the life-saving equipment for my premature baby just to charge my sister's iPhone, and they still don't think they did anything wrong. Please listen closely. What I'm about to share is painful, but it's real. If this story reaches your heart, I hope you'll stay till the end and share it with someone who needs to hear it too. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 27 years old and a NICU nurse. A few months ago, I gave birth to my baby boy, Mike. He came into this world too early, only 28 weeks, and had to fight for every breath from the moment he arrived. After weeks in the hospital, we were finally able to bring him home, but only with special breathing equipment and monitors to track his heart rate. My husband, Noah, and I were struggling financially, so we moved in with my parents to try and get back on our feet. It wasn't easy, especially with my younger sister, Brielle, living there too. She's 19, doesn't work, and spends all her time on her phone. My parents spoil her like she's still a child, and she has never faced any real responsibility. One night, during a heavy storm, the lights flickered in the house. I immediately ran to check on Micah. That's when I noticed something terrifying. His breathing equipment was off. The monitor wasn't blinking. Nothing was working. My heart dropped. Then I saw it. Brielle was sitting in the corner of the room, casually scrolling on her phone, and it was plugged into the wall outlet meant for Micah's life-saving machine. I screamed. I rushed to Micah and tried to restart the equipment. He let out a soft gasp. I thought I was losing him. My cries woke the entire house. Noah came running. My parents came too. But instead of being horrified, my mom told me to calm down. My dad said, "It's just a charger. He was sleeping, right?" Brielle didn't even look guilty. She rolled her eyes and said she just needed a bit of charge and didn't think it would matter. I was shaking. Noah yelled. I cried. But none of it mattered. My parents told us we were being dramatic. They said I was too emotional and that Micah was fine. They didn't understand, or maybe they just didn't care. That night changed everything. I realized something far worse than the unplugged cord. It was the people around me. The ones who were supposed to protect me and my baby were the ones putting him at risk. And sadly, that was only the beginning of what they would do. The morning after the terrifying night, I sat down with my parents and Brielle. My hands were still shaking. I needed them to understand how serious it was, how close Micah had come to not breathing. But instead of taking responsibility, they all looked at me like I was making a big deal out of nothing. It was just a misunderstanding, my dad said calmly, sipping his coffee like we weren't talking about life and death. My mom nodded, adding, Brielle didn't know the baby needed it that badly. He was sleeping anyway, wasn't he? Brielle rolled her eyes and muttered, It's not like he stopped breathing. You're always so dramatic. I looked at Noah, hoping someone else would scream. He clenched his fists and stood up. That plug was keeping our son alive, he said through gritted teeth. And you all act like we should just get over it. My parents told us if we didn't like the way things were, we could find another place to live. But we had nowhere else. Noah's job barely covered the basics, and my maternity leave had no pay. We were stuck. Still, I refused to let that happen again. I used some emergency savings to buy backup batteries and surge protectors. I rearranged the room so no one could touch Micah's setup without going through me first. But the air in the house changed. Brielle started making little comments every time she walked past me. Maybe if you could afford your own place, you wouldn't have to worry about other people's chargers. She laughed like it was a joke, but it stung every time. I didn't say anything. I just started writing. Every incident, every cruel remark, every time the power blinked or the equipment flickered. I took pictures. I saved receipts. I even installed a little camera near Micah's crib when no one was looking. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being careful, because I knew now my parents would always take Brielle's side. And Brielle, she didn't see Micah as a fragile baby fighting to live. She saw him as an inconvenience. I didn't know what I would do with the evidence yet, but I knew I needed it, because people like them, they'd never admit they were wrong. I had to be ready, just in case this simple mistake ever happened again. It had been a few weeks since the first incident, and I had done everything I could to prevent it from ever happening again. Backup batteries. Locked plugs. I even posted a note on the wall that read, "Do not unplug this. Baby's life depends on it." I was paranoid, yes, but I was also a mother. That day, I had a quick doctor's appointment and decided to surprise Noah and Micah by bringing back his favorite baby formula. I walked into the house a little earlier than planned. The moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt wrong. The usual soft humming sound from Micah's machine wasn't there. My heart jumped. I ran into the room. The machine was off. The cord was pulled from the wall. And Micah was gasping softly, his tiny chest struggling to rise and fall. I didn't scream this time. I froze for 1 second, then snapped into action. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and began checking the backup battery. It had been unplugged too. I heard footsteps behind me, and when I turned around, there she was. Brielle, with her phone in hand, plugged into the same outlet. I couldn't even speak. The paramedics arrived in minutes. They stabilized Micah, checked his oxygen levels, and asked me if this had happened before. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. Noah arrived soon after. When he saw the ambulance outside and Micah being treated, he completely lost it. He stormed into the house and confronted Brielle. Are you insane? You did it again? You could have killed him. Brielle looked bored. Relax. He's fine. Fine. He wasn't breathing properly. Noah roared. That's when my parents came in, shouting over everyone. My dad yelled, enough of this. You two are tearing this family apart. My mom grabbed Brielle and pulled her aside protectively. She's just a teenager. She didn't mean any harm. I stood there holding Micah, shaking. You think this is drama? I whispered. My son could have died. Again. Emma, you're being emotional, my mom said. This house is tension because of your constant accusations. Something inside me cracked. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned around, grabbed Micah's bag, and walked out. That night, I sat in my car with Micah wrapped in a blanket, his tiny fingers curled around mine. We parked in a quiet lot near the hospital, and I let the silence hold us. I didn't sleep. I just watched him breathe. I had never felt more alone, or more clear. This wasn't a mistake. This was cruelty hidden behind a fake smile, and I couldn't pretend anymore. Not for family. Not for peace. I had to protect my son, even if it meant leaving everything else behind. A week after the second incident, I was still trying to keep my head above water. I barely slept. Every time Micah coughed, I jolted awake. Noah and I were doing our best, but the air in that house was poison. Then came the knock at the door. A woman with kind eyes stood on the porch, holding a clipboard. I'm with Child Protective Services, she said gently. We received a wellness report about your mental state and your baby's safety. I froze. My heart pounded. What? I asked, barely breathing. She explained that someone had claimed I was emotionally unstable, possibly putting Micah at risk. She needed to do a home check and speak with me privately. I let her in, tears already rising. The visit was calm. I showed her Micah's setup, his medical documents, the prescriptions, the emergency contacts, everything. She spoke with me and with Noah. She asked about stress, support, sleep. All the things I already knew were hanging by a thread. But I answered honestly. Before she left, she smiled and said, It's clear you're doing your best in an incredibly tough situation. You and your son are safe. I'll be closing this report. But the relief was short-lived, because I knew who had called her. My own parents. They hadn't tried to apologize for what Brielle did. Instead, they tried to paint me as unstable. It wasn't about Micah. It was about making me look like the problem. That same evening, I found something else. Brielle had forgotten to log out of her Instagram on the shared family tablet. As I checked the screen to set up something for Micah, a message popped up. It was a photo of Micah's baby monitor, unplugged, captioned. LMAO, she freaked out like the baby was going to explode, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy. Sent to her friend. My hands shook. My vision blurred. They had joked about it. Mocked it. Mocked him. That was the moment it hit me. My family didn't love Micah. They didn't respect his life. All they wanted was to protect Brielle from consequences, even if it meant endangering a newborn. The next day, during yet another argument, my mother said coldly, If you can't stop stirring up problems, you and your baby will need to leave. We've done enough. That was it. Noah made a call to an old army buddy, and within 2 days, we had a key to a small, rundown studio apartment. It wasn't much, peeling paint, no furniture, barely any light. But it was ours, and it was safe. That night, I held Micah close and whispered, They may have betrayed us, but they won't break us. The day we moved into the one-room apartment, it felt like we were stepping into a whole new life, a very small, cold, and empty one, but a life we could finally call our own. The walls were bare, the floor creaked, and we had only a mattress, one chair, and Micah's crib. But there was something precious here that we hadn't had in weeks. Peace. Noah set up Micah's equipment with quiet care, double-checking every cord and battery. I watched them both, my husband exhausted but determined, and my baby boy, fighting so hard just to grow, to breathe, to live. For the first few nights, I didn't sleep much. Not from fear anymore, but from the flood of thoughts that wouldn't let me rest. Everything my parents had done, or refused to do, played over in my mind like a broken record. The lies, the blame, the betrayal. So I began writing, not on social media, not to vent, but in a plain notebook I kept under the crib. I wrote down everything. The day Micah was born, the hospital stay, the homecoming, the first time Brielle unplugged his machine, the second time, the CPS visit, the eviction threat, the photo of the unplugged monitor and her laughing emojis. Every word, every insult, every silence. I wrote it all. I wasn't thinking of revenge. Not yet. Micah started getting stronger. His breathing stabilized, and the panic in his eyes slowly faded. He began making little sounds, not cries, but the sweet coos that made my heart swell. His color looked better. He even smiled once. That moment alone was worth everything we'd lost. But peace has a funny way of revealing what's still broken. One afternoon, I got a call from my cousin, Amara. She said she'd heard I was having episodes, and that my parents were worried about my mental state. I laughed bitterly. That lie had traveled faster than the truth ever could. They weren't just done with me, they were trying to destroy my name. That's when the calm inside me cracked again. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth to be known. I pulled out my notebook and began organizing the pages. I uploaded the photos I had saved, the emergency room record, the social worker's report clearing me, screenshots of Brielle's messages. I started researching. Noah helped quietly, carefully. He found a friend who worked in legal support. Just someone to talk to. Just to ask questions. We didn't speak loudly in that little room. We whispered. We planned. While Micah slept between us, we began building something stronger than anger. Truth. Because if my parents could try to take my name, to rewrite the story of who I was, then I had every right to write the truth back. Word by word, I was getting ready. And this time, I wouldn't be silent. I didn't wake up one day wanting revenge. It just grew inside me slowly, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. At first, I only wanted space. Then I wanted peace. But after everything they said, and everything they did, I wanted the truth to mean something. One quiet afternoon, while Micah napped, I called a lawyer. I didn't know what I was looking for, exactly. I just asked, is it negligence if someone repeatedly unplugged life-saving medical equipment, and my baby suffered for it? She listened, carefully. Then she asked for medical records, equipment damage reports, and hospital notes. When I sent over what I had, her reply was clear. You may have a case. And more than that, this could show actual harm. Noah dove in like a soldier on a mission. He gathered photos, printed documents, logged every date, every repair bill. He scanned old text messages. Anything that might prove that what happened wasn't an accident. It was repeated, preventable, and dangerous. I also reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Ms. Donnelly, my high school psychology teacher. She now worked in child advocacy. I told her everything. She didn't judge. She just said, "You're not crazy, and you're not alone." Then came the message I didn't expect. My mom texted, saying they wanted to talk things out over a family dinner. She said they missed Micah and wanted to make peace. I almost deleted it, but then I paused. What if I went? Not for closure, but for the final piece of proof. I tucked a tiny recorder inside the lining of my purse. Noah wasn't thrilled, but he understood. Just stay calm, he whispered as I left. Get what you need. Dinner was awkward. My father barely looked at me. My mother acted overly sweet, fake smiles and forced questions. Brielle, of course, rolled her eyes the second I stepped in. Halfway through dinner, she joked, "Remember when I just needed like 3% battery and Emma thought Micah was gonna die?" She laughed. My mother joined in, saying, "She's always been dramatic. The baby was fine. It's not like he was going to die or something." My hands clenched under the table. I didn't say a word. I let them speak. I let the recorder catch every word, every laugh. And when I left, I didn't cry. I smiled, because now I had proof, not just of what they did, but of who they truly were. The letter went out on a Tuesday. It was printed on clean white paper with sharp black ink, signed by my lawyer and delivered straight to my parents' mailbox. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't scream or threaten. It simply told the truth. It listed the medical equipment that had been damaged, the emergency hospital visit, the cost of repairs, and the emotional distress I had endured, all due to their repeated careless actions. It named Micah as the innocent victim of neglect, and it asked for fair compensation. At first they scoffed. My dad called me the same evening, his voice full of sarcasm. "Are you seriously trying to sue your own family over a charger?" I didn't reply. He laughed. "You've lost your mind." But my lawyer followed up. She explained calmly, professionally, this wasn't about a charger. It was about repeated, documented negligence. It was about unplugging medical equipment, risking the life of a premature infant, and mocking it afterward. It was about willful disregard. She mentioned the possibility of press coverage. She mentioned what would happen if Micah's case reached child advocacy groups or a courtroom. That changed everything. 3 days later, they sent an offer through their lawyer, a quiet settlement, a lump sum. No apology, no admission of guilt, just a number and a request to make it all go away. I refused. I told my lawyer to proceed with filing for negligent endangerment of a minor. The silence after that was louder than any words. Word began to spread through the family. At first, people were confused, shocked. Some believed my parents' side, that I was just bitter or mentally overwhelmed. But then the facts came out. Screenshots, medical records, the CPS visit that I passed without concern, the audio recordings. I sent copies to the few aunts and uncles I trusted. One by one, some began to reach out. Messages like, "I didn't know it was that serious," and "We're so sorry you went through this," began to appear. A few even visited, bringing warm food and soft clothes for Micah. They cried. I cried too. Then I heard about Brielle. The story had gotten out, not just within the family, but beyond. A family friend had shared details on a parenting forum. From there, it spread. Brielle's name wasn't mentioned, but people connected the dots. The college she applied to called for an interview follow-up, asking about a situation involving a minor and a wellness investigation. Her dream school suddenly fell quiet. She posted online about how she was being attacked unfairly, but most people weren't buying it. The cracks had begun to spread. What they tried to bury with laughter and lies was finally being seen for what it truly was. Not family drama, not just a mistake, but a warning, and now a reckoning. When the official case filing was made public, my parents didn't waste time. They hired their own lawyer, expensive, polished, and aggressive. They were ready to fight. But the problem for them was the truth. There were too many receipts, too many records, too much evidence. ER visits, pediatric notes, text messages, audio recordings, timestamps, and even Brielle's own words, laughing about the night she unplugged Micah's machine. It was no longer just our word against theirs. It was fact. They tried to twist it. Their lawyer said I was using the legal system for personal revenge, that I was emotionally overwhelmed as a new mother. But none of it stuck. The judge could see through the excuses. And so could everyone else. One evening, as I rocked Micah to sleep in our small apartment, I got a text from Brielle. "You've ruined everything." I stared at it for a while. No apology. No guilt. Just blame. Noah looked over my shoulder and said quietly, "We didn't ruin anything. We just stopped pretending." The case dragged on for weeks. Motions. Delays. Paperwork. My parents tried to paint themselves as victims, as loving grandparents who were misunderstood. But with every lie, the truth hit harder. Eventually, they folded. A settlement was reached. $150,000, a formal written apology, and a restraining order preventing any contact with me, Noah, or Micah. It wasn't about the money, though it did help us finally move into a decent 2-bedroom apartment with heating and space for Micah's growing needs. But what meant more was the apology, typed and signed, admitting their actions were harmful, negligent, and inexcusable. And the restraining order? That was peace. I took a portion of the money and donated it to the NICU that had saved Micah's life. I met with the nurses, hugged them, and thanked them again. "He wouldn't be here without you," I said, holding my now chubby, giggling baby boy in my arms. It felt good, but it didn't feel done. Because while justice had been served on paper, I knew there were other mothers out there. Women being gaslit by their own families, called dramatic for protecting their children, silenced for speaking up. My revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about making sure no one else would suffer like we did in silence. And I was just getting started. After the settlement was finalized, I knew there was only one thing left to do: cut the cord completely. No more second chances. No more pretending. I boxed everything up. Every childhood photo, every birthday card my parents ever gave me, every gift from Brielle, the handmade necklace from when I was 10, the old scrapbook my mom made, even the little family frame that used to sit by my bedside. All of it. I placed a single note on top of the box. "I only want things that didn't almost cost me my son's life." Then I mailed it to their house. No return address. No emotion left. A week later, I found out Brielle had officially withdrawn from her dream university. The attention from the lawsuit had reached farther than she expected. People at her school had started whispering. A few classmates had even messaged me, some with kindness, some just looking for gossip. But the damage was done. She posted a long, emotional rant online about being canceled by her own sister. But even her online friends had turned cold. They'd read the documents. They'd heard the recordings. They knew. It wasn't cancellation. It was consequence. Then I did something I'd been putting off for months. I wrote a letter to my entire extended family. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was simply honest. I told them the full story, from the moment Micah was born to the night I slept in a freezing car with him on my chest. I laid out the facts, the unplugged equipment, the emergency visits, the photos, the jokes, the lies. I attached copies of the apology letter and the court documents. I ended it with this: "You may choose to believe whatever you want. You may decide this was just family drama. That's your right. But I lived it. And my son nearly died because of it. This letter is not to convince you. It's to give you the truth for once." I mailed or emailed it to every aunt, uncle, cousin, and even my grandparents. Some of them replied almost immediately. "I'm so sorry, Emma. We had no idea it was this bad. Thank you for being brave." A few sent gifts for Micah. Others just sent words of love. One uncle even called Noah, saying he was proud of how we protected our little family. But many stayed silent. No reply. No call. No message. And that too was an answer. I didn't chase anyone. I didn't beg them to pick a side. Because I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was looking for peace. And sometimes peace comes only when you finally shut the door and never look back. Life didn't become perfect overnight, but it became theirs. After months of scraping by, Emma and Noah finally moved out of the cramped one-room studio and into a small two-bedroom apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it had warmth, light, and enough space for Micah to take his first steps. They painted the walls themselves, set up secondhand furniture, and hung up a tiny photo wall, just the three of them. Micah turned one with a messy cake smash, a tiny crown, and more laughter than Emma thought her heart could hold. His health had stabilized. He was giggling, toddling, babbling like he had stories to tell already. The scar of his early struggles still lingered in the lines on Emma's face, but Micah was thriving. Still, some nights weren't easy. Sometimes Emma jolted awake, heart pounding, ears ringing with phantom beeps from hospital monitors. She would rush to Micah's crib, watch the slow rise and fall of his chest, feel the warmth of his skin, and finally, allow herself to breathe. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened, and as her story quietly spread, not through tabloids or headlines, but through whispers mother to mother, something unexpected happened. Other women began reaching out. Some were strangers who had read her letter. Others were old friends who had once drifted away. A few were mothers from the NICU whose babies had fought beside Mike. They shared stories of betrayal, fear, silent struggles behind closed doors. They didn't offer pity. They offered recognition. Emma started journaling again, but not just for herself. She began writing for those women, those silent warriors who had once felt just as alone. One evening, while rocking Micah to sleep, she looked at his peaceful face and felt the weight of everything she had survived. Not defeated, not bitter, just changed. Later, she posted a short message to her blog, one that would be shared hundreds of times. I used to think family meant blood, that no matter what, they'd protect you. But I've learned, sometimes family is just the people who don't unplug the ones you love. Sometimes, family is who stays awake with you when no one else cares. That's the family I fight for now. And in that truth, messy, painful, but finally real, Emma found something close to peace. What would you have done if you were in Emma's place? Would you have cut ties completely, or tried to forgive and move on? I really want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And if heartfelt stories of truth, betrayal, and healing speak to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you're always the first to hear what's next.